So in just 24 hours, there's been a lot of changes in the key players in the Daunte Wright case out of Brooklyn Center in Minnesota. First, Officer Kim Potter, who's the shooter of Daunte Wright, and Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon both resigned, turning in their letters of resignation to Mayor Elliott. The mayor was asked during a press conference why she was allowed to resign and not be fired, and here's what he had to say.
The things that the community, that folks who have been out here protesting have been calling for, and that is that the officer should be relieved of her duties. And so, I'm hoping that this will help bring some calm to the community. Although, I think ultimately people want justice. They want, full accountability under the law. And so that's what we're going to continue to work for. We have to, make sure that justice is served, justice is done. Daunte Wright, deserves that. His family deserves that. And, I'm appreciative of the officer, stepping down and saying that, she felt that was the right thing to do, for the community. And, I couldn't agree more.
Did the city ask her to resign?
We did not ask her to resign. That was a decision she made. In order for us to make that decision, we were going through our own processes to make sure that that internally we had all of the documentation in order to be able to do that. But the officer resigned. And so we have that resignation at this moment.
So according to what the mayor's saying, it looks like they were already planning to terminate her, but she sent in her letter of resignation before 10 a.m. So it seems like she resigned before they can actually fire her. When asked why Chief Tim Gannon resigned, Mayor Elliott replied that he couldn't discuss what happened at the time, and he didn't say anything else about it. But could it be that the mayor has been very outspoken on several issues, such as affording Officer Potter due process or his stance on use of force? This is what Mayor Elliott had to say when asked by an activist at the press conference if he supported an action to suspend the use of weapons by law enforcement when conducting traffic stops. So what the activist was saying is, until this investigation is complete and we find out exactly what happened, would you stop cops from using their weapons or actually carrying weapons during traffic stops? And this is what he had to say.
Certainly, I am predisposed to doing everything we can to reduce the opportunity for officers to use deadly force in situations where they're not necessary. I would like to receive the full text of your request and make sure that we sit down and go through it and see how we can implement. I don't believe that officers need to necessarily have weapons. Every time they're making a traffic stop. Or engaged in situations that don't necessarily call for weapons. We know that there are many other jurisdictions, even around the world, where that is not, necessarily the case. It's not needed, and so I am very much interested in receiving the full text of the policies that you're recommending to us, so that we can review that. Whatever we can do to make sure that our communities are kept safe, we want to do that.
This is very interesting. And as everyone knows, traffic stops are very dangerous. Traffic stops and domestic violence calls are probably some of the more dangerous daily routine things they do. So suggesting that cops do not need firearms during a traffic stop could be controversial. So maybe that's why the mayor decided to resign. Another issue, it was raised that the thin blue line law enforcement flag, they said that it needed to be removed from the police headquarters. There were several complaints about it, and it created a division in the community. So the mayor ordered the flag to be removed from police headquarters. That's another controversial move that Mayor Mike Elliott decided to
I have gotten a number of inquiries about the flag. I've gotten inquiries from the ACLU of Minnesota, requests, to have that flag taken down because they see it and the community sees it as inflammatory. And so with people coming to the department expressing their anger and seeing the flag, we don't want the flag to be a flashpoint that angers people and does that in a way that that they're going to come to the department, and so we've asked the flag to be removed. Has the flag been removed?
I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, but we will check.
Okay. My understanding is that. Do you know whether the blue flag has?
No.
Okay, you're not aware. Okay.
First I've heard of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I do believe that the flag is no longer there, and what's there is the American flag.
So one of the controversies.
So in another shakeup, the city manager of Brooklyn Center, Curt Boganey, he was actually in control of the police department at the time. And during yesterday's press conference, he was asked if he supported immediately terminating the officer involved in the shooting. He responded by saying that he believes that Officer Potter should have due process just like anyone else. And obviously that didn't sit well with city council and the mayor. So city manager Boganey was fired by the town city council in an emergency meeting on Monday. So now Mayor Mike Elliott oversees the police department, at least temporarily. This is what happened when city manager Curt Boganey spoke up against the request by activists to immediately fire Officer Potter.
My name is Curt Boganey, Boganey. And in response to the question about termination, all employees working for the city of Brooklyn Center are entitled to due process with respect to discipline. This employee will receive due process, and that's really all that I can say today.
Do you support the termination of an officer like this who has made the type of mistake that has cost a resident of yours life? Do you support the termination of this type of officer? And what message are we sending here in Brooklyn Center to the rest of the world about the valuation of black life? Do you support the termination of this type of an officer?
I understand and appreciate the comment that you made and why you said it. But if I were to answer that question, I would be contradicting what I said a moment ago, which is to say that all employees are entitled to due process, and after that due process, discipline will be determined. If I were to say anything else, I would actually be contradicting the idea of due process.
One final question. What's your expectation for how a significantly white police force here in Brooklyn Center treats the black and brown members of this community? What expectation have you communicated down to the chief and to the officers under him for how they are to interface with the vast majority, because the vast majority of this population is black and brown? How have you communicated to them to interface and interact with people who look like me?
Absolutely, I've communicated that to the chief, and I do believe that the chief concurs with the notion that every resident of Brooklyn Center must be treated fairly, must be treated equitably. The city council has been very clear in its expectations about fairness and equity. We are implementing this year an Office of Anti-Racism Principles and Practices. We are hiring an equity officer in the next several weeks. The city council has provided specific direction about accountability for the police department and transparency for the police department. We've been providing reports to the
Can
city.
you talk to us about the
City council.
accountability?
Clearly, racial profiling that happened in this situation. We are standing in solidarity and calling for the firing of this officer. You have talked about her having due process, although Daunte Wright did not get due process in that situation. She needs to be fired immediately to send a message that this type of behavior will not be condoned within the city of Brooklyn Center.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Chief,
Should an officer who can't tell the difference between a taser and a handgun, should they go out in a vehicle with both items in their car?
it really wouldn't be appropriate for me to respond to that.
So as you can see from that clip right there, there was a tense exchange between the activists that were inside the press conference and the city manager. The city manager was saying that he wants to have due process for Officer Potter, due process for any of the city employees, but the community was calling for a disregard of that and immediate termination. It seems like the city council and Mayor Elliott was against the due process for this officer and ultimately fired the city manager. And it was a direct result of the comments that he made in this press conference.